In February of 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, many countries from around the world rushed to support Ukraine. Some countries like Germany, Denmark, and Latvia even told their citizens it was okay to join the war if they wanted to. But not South Korea. In fact, South Korea has punished at least 4 citizens who went to Ukraine as volunteers to fight Russia alongside the Ukrainians. Shortly after the Russian invasion, South Korea imposed a travel ban on South Koreans entering Ukraine without permission. Those who do face up to a year in prison or a maximum fine of 10 million won, which is roughly about $7,500. Speaking of Ukraine, another major win for the country. Yesterday, the country's Deputy Defense Minister, Anna Muller, confirmed that Ukraine has regained control of the village of Urozhaine, thanks in part to Ukraine's use of the controversial cluster munitions. Ukrainian Marines continue to inch southeast towards the key port city of Mariupol, which has been in Russian control since May 2022. Ukraine's counteroffensive has been a slow and grueling process, and the war is far from over. But today, an update that Ukraine has been waiting for. The United States announced that it will be sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine from Denmark and the Netherlands once pilot training is completed. These F-16 fighter jets were made by U.S. company Lockheed Martin. Ambassador of Ukraine to the United States, Oksana Markarova, joins me. Nice to talk to you, Ambassador.
Pleasure to be here, Greta. Thank you for having me.
How important are those F-16s?
Well, all capabilities are important. As we said from the beginning of this phase of the war, because the war started in 2014, we are against a very large, very brutal enemy, and they're so much bigger than us. So we need all the capabilities. And of course, to add in the future F-16s and other, attack helicopters is going to be very, very useful.
You know, the United States oftentimes talk about the war starting in February 2022, and you say 2014. That's when Russia annexed Crimea. Did the United States, has the United States sort of glossed over that? I mean, did we sort of ignore what was going on in Ukraine until February of 2022? Because that is such an important point, such an important time in Ukrainian history.
Well, U.S. never acknowledged this illegal attack in Crimea and annexation and illegal also occupation in parts of Donetsk and Lugansk. But you're right, the reaction not only of the U.S. but the whole world has not been as strong as it has been since February 24th. And we're very glad because Russia miscalculated gravely, attacking us this time, again re-invading Ukraine and starting the full-fledged war. And now we have the whole coalition of countries and very grateful to the Americans that U.S. is on our side today.
Well, I've been there, as I told you before, when you just sat down. I've been there. Seeing people pour out of Ukraine in the early days was like, like the old black and white movies I used to see as a kid coming out of, escaping Germany and Poland. On the trains, trains packed, and it was horrible. And then you've got the food problems, and you've got the rugged winters there. But the American people, were so vastly interested in the beginning. But now we've got 2024, we've got an election, we've got Maui, we've got the wildfires in Hawaii, we've got all these things going on, and it seems like there's such war fatigue among Americans. And do you see that? Do you worry that there's war fatigue to get Americans interested in your crisis?
I just came back from Ohio, and it's not only in Washington, D.C., it's everywhere that I feel very strong support of people on a very strong bipartisan basis. Yes, it's been a very long war. Yes, it's very difficult. Yes, it's natural for people to pay attention, especially to what happens back home. But I do feel that the majority of Americans understand that this fight is so much bigger than about Ukraine, that it's about the values which Americans share with us, freedom, dignity, independence, something that this country is based on. So thank you for being there, and thank you for all brave journalists who travel to Ukraine and who show what happens there on the battlefield, but everywhere in Ukraine. It's because of you and our fight that Americans still support us, and I hope the support will continue.
This war is lasting a lot longer than I think everybody expected. Well, first of all, the Ukrainians were pretty tough. I think the Russians thought Putin thought he was going to roll over you. That didn't happen. But is there an end in sight?
Well, President Zelensky very clearly stated even last year what would be the peace formula, what would be the win for Ukraine, but not, again, only for Ukraine, because Putin not only disrupted life in Ukraine, he also completely challenged the global order as we all knew it. The UN Charter, the territorial integrity has been breached. The sovereignty of the country has been breached. And if Putin can do it in Ukraine, then anyone can do it. So the end game is first, of course, to win and regain control over our territories. But it's not the only end.
Is there any indication that the sanctions that are imposed on Russia and on the oligarchs and individuals, that it's having any impact to the point where Putin, that he might be backing off a little bit?
It has an impact. It decreases the ability of Russia to actually conduct this war, to produce, to make more money for this war. And it also decreases the influence of all these people around him. Now, in order for that to be decisive also in stopping the war, we need to constantly upgrade the sanctions. We need to constantly enforce them so that they're not evading them. And there is still a lot we can do. Out of 330 Russian banks, only 24 are sanctioned by the US. So it's still a long way to go.
Well, your background is finance, as you told me. At what point does the Russian economy collapse to the point where the Russian people tell Putin that's enough?
Well, it's a very isolated economy with the exception of course, oil and gas and everything that they are selling. So in order for them to feel, and again, Russian leadership does not care about the Russian people. They already are living very poorly, but it doesn't stop them from spending billions on war, on killing Ukrainians, rather than doing something for their own people. But if we keep sanctioning Russian financial system, if we keep lowering the oil price cap and the products, if they will have less and less money to conduct this, at some point, together, of course, with decisive victories on the battlefield, they will realize that they cannot do it.
Ambassador, nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you.